Now, I know a lot of people have been watching events that have been happening all over the world, and seeing how I am a Bible believer, I do also try and pay attention to some of the things that have been happening, because there has been a lot. And over the years, there are many things that have been happening and show that history is repeating itself, and this empire that we call America is coming to an end. One thing that I noticed a couple of years ago is they would make these end time prophecy videos on YouTube. It would come and pass, but I was noticing some of the things that they were talking about. One thing that I noticed that caught my attention was the waters turning red, blood red. You had rivers, lakes, streams turn red all over the world. There was no explanation. They were saying maybe it was the red algae blooms. They were saying maybe it was runoff from a chemical or dye. But usually when the scientists would study it, there was nothing that they found out of the ordinary. You even see in certain countries where it was raining blood red water. It was all over the trees. It would get all over the laundry that was hanging out on the clotheslines. A lot of these countries, the people rely on the rainwater. In their buckets, the water was red. And it was also tested, and there was nothing out of the ordinary with it. But it did remind me of one of the plagues. Another thing that has been happening, animal die-offs, and that is also in the biblical text. You have fish die-offs. It even happened here in Indianapolis a couple of times, where you had fish everywhere, dead. You have whales beached and dead, dolphins and sea lions, and you had crawfish and seaweed and lots of ocean life that is dead, that's washing onto shore. You have animals all over the world dropping dead, birds falling out of the sky dead. You have the fires in California, and not only California, but in the Midwest, uncontrollable fires. You also had a fire that I will never forget in Greece, and I talked about a young black boy who was murdered because a white female came up talking to him, and some of the males there were jealous, and they killed him. But not too long after, there was a fire in Greece that literally wiped a village off the map. The fire was so hot that it was melting the metal of the cars. It was melting the tires on the wheels. There were walls of fire. People couldn't run away from it. They died right there. They burned to death. The only thing people could do was run out into the ocean, the water. There were children and parents and women with their infants that were found burned to death. There has been numerous earthquakes, and everybody is now again watching Yellowstone because the caldera, that's a super volcano. They don't know when it's going to go. They know it's been over 130 earthquakes that happened there, that the geysers have dried up. And it's so hot that it's melting the limestone, and that's what's shooting out of the geysers. And people are worried about that. The hurricanes, like down in Florida, where you have the stand my ground laws, and it's been a lot of racism just on display there. They've been getting pummeled by hurricanes. They haven't even bounced back from Irma when they got hit with Michael. Now, if you remember Florence, the hurricane that hit North and South Carolina, and it dropped so much rainwater, there has been an explosion of frogs, which is another biblical plague. They said there are thousands, tens of thousands of frogs. And it says a population explosion of tens of thousands of frogs and toads have emerged on North Carolina's coastal plain, leading to social media reports frogs found hopping on kitchen counters, crawling in beds, and even falling on people as they step outside. They're all over my windows. I had one jump on my face in bed. I had another in the kitchen on the cutting board. They're everywhere. And the blame is Hurricane Florence record-setting floods for this biblical style plague. And again, when you read these articles, they will try and play down that this is a plague. They will acknowledge what it looks like, but then they're going to try and throw a twist in there because it says is justified but not entirely accurate. And it's always the words that leaves a maybe we can pivot this way or that way. It's always nothing definite or fact. They won't say it's definitely not a biblical plague. They know how to play with words. What happened, said state biologist Jeff Hall, is a convergence of two types of frogs and toad population explosions along the coast. They said the first during the abnormal heavy rains in June and July, and the second is a boom of exploding breeding toads. Now, again, they are never going to just accept it for what it is. They are going to twist and turn and use their scientists and prop them up there to try and make you feel better about what's happening and what's going on. These are biblical plagues. I will sit there and I will say that is exactly what these look like. Or they never would have said anything about it in the first place. Also, in the Carolinas, they are saying there are monstrosities flying around. There are mosquitoes that's 20 times larger than the normal swarms in the Carolinas after Hurricane Florence. So, again, if you look at some of the biblical plagues, it was the water turning to blood. It was frogs, it was lice and flies and locusts, and animals were dying. I mean, it's the same thing repeating itself. It was the biblical plagues that happened in Egypt. And if you do a little bit of research, if you look at the United States and you look at Egypt, if you compare the Mississippi River to the Nile River and the amount of mass land on the east side of that river versus the west side, you have Memphis, Tennessee near the Mississippi River, and you have Memphis, Egypt near the Nile. I mean, it matches up, and both lands are a land of bondage, for us as a people. So now you have these plagues that are happening because we are spread throughout the world, and this will be something that will happen throughout the world. But you do see a lot of similarities that happen in the biblical text to Egypt that is now happening to America. And then this here is I-40. It's the highway north of Wilmington. This is a whole highway here. It looks like a river. It does look like a river. It looks like the wetlands. I wanted to put it out there because it seems like nobody is talking about this. This is not newsworthy. And I do understand when plagues happen and judgment happen, the nation wants to sweep it under the rug. Not to mention the financial cost of these storms. They keep rebuilding, and before they can finish, it gets destroyed again, and then they have to rebuild again. And that is also a financial judgment on this nation. I'll go ahead and end it here. Go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about these plague-like instances happening to the US, and I will see you in the next one.